know this next one is going to be just as good, because I know this team. Are they cute and ready to go, Emily? SolarCell International.
So my biggest takeaway from the program, it's been interesting to learn the business side. You know, I came from the government, so it's not, the financial piece was never that big of a deal in the past just from the government. And so learning the financial piece and learning the different sources of where funding comes from, how many different opportunities there are to get money. You know, if you do have a good idea, how to get that funded has been probably the greatest takeaway.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start my presentation here a little bit differently than some of the others. You see this number here? Does anybody have any idea what that might represent? Any? $640 billion per year. That's the yearly expected global expenditure investments in renewable energies come 2030. Okay? How about this number? $153.6 billion per year. It's a very large number. That would be just the expected yearly investment in solar alone. So, from the manufacture and sale of solar modules that are twice as efficient as our competitors at half the price, and the sale of excess energy back to the utilities, SolarCell International will become the market leader within 5 years, without the need of venture capital. That's a global market of $153 billion per year. My name is Ed Paswitz. I'm here to represent SolarCell International and tell you guys a little bit about our business plan. Due to political pressures against carbon-based fuels, and as well as their stagnating technologies, along with technological advances that are being made from the renewable side, as well as the efficiencies and the cutting of costs of renewable energies, there's investment in renewables is expected to increase 230% per year by 2030. Led by wind and solar, of course, solar being represented here in yellow, as I said, to $153 billion per year. So, which is the best solar technology that's out there? Well, there are basically two types of solar technology. You have conventional, and you have a newer thin film. Conventional, which we've all seen before, is bulky and heavy, and it requires large racks to keep them in place. In addition, the efficiency of that technology is really reaching its limit at 15%. Then there's the newer thin film. It can be used, it's very thin and flexible, it can be used in many other places that conventional just can't, as you can see here. And the best thin film that has been developed is CIGS. It's very, very good and very efficient, however, there's one major problem. It has a costly manufacturing process, but we've got that covered. So, our patented process can drive CIGS technology efficiency up to 26%, while lowering manufacturing costs at the same time. In actuality, there's an inverse relationship between the efficiency increase and decrease in manufacturing costs on a per watt basis. And finally, our process can be scalable to any size solar cell. Okay, so we have this great technology and this huge market. How are we going to go about penetrating that market with the technology? Well, first of our strategic partners would be with the lab in the University of Central Florida that first originally developed this technology. The purpose for this is to ensure that they can continue their research, increasing the efficiencies and decreasing the costs, while our company can help them with that. The next two would be not only our next two partners, but also our first customers. There's a Brazilian hydrothermal company and the government of Qatar, both of which have very, very deep pockets and are looking to make large investments in solar technology. In addition to that, they also plan on purchasing and implementing the solar cells for themselves as well as their customer base. The next of our partners would be with an investment banker. The reason why we would have this particular partner is so that they could help us find and purchase an already listed shell company. That would give us access to the capital markets. Once we do have that investment in place, the investment banker in place, we will find that type of company, the listed company, and get that access to those capital markets. That sets us up for 3 specific items that we need to have in our company. First of all, the capital markets and trillions of dollars of investment money that we spoke about a moment ago. In addition, it also gives us an exit strategy for investors who may want to exit the investment. And the third, it will be assisting us with our securitization process. Let me explain what that means. Part of our revenue strategy is to provide free solar installations to clients, to end customers, giving them 15% off on their energy needs, while selling the rest of it back to the utilities. Essentially what this would do is actually create a commodity market of electricity, allowing us to continue on that revenue stream as well. Once we have that in place and we are on the market, on the stock market, then we will receive a commitment from our equity partners of $500 million to build and construct our manufacturing facility. With the manufacturing facility, we are going to be manufacturing at first 5 megawatts, ramping up to 30 megawatts, and then hopefully getting into a gigawatt in the near future, definitely being world-class as far as manufacturing solar modules are concerned. So, while the facility is being built, we've also established another partnership, and this would be with a number of installation companies that would provide our installations in the U.S. as well as other major markets throughout the world, as I was talking about earlier. In 2017, we will deliver our first 3,000 units to our equity partners, of course at a very discounted rate, being that they are our equity partners in their place in the company, and we will be ready to go as far as delivering those are concerned. Finally, with the full supply chain ready, both upstream and downstream, we will get our last equity partner, our last partner, a U.S. utility company. That way we have both the upstream and the downstream covered. So, the business and revenue model includes both the upstream as well as the downstream. The upstream, the manufacture and sale of those highly efficient, low-cost solar modules. The downstream, the sale of electricity back to utilities from the installations that we have done for free. Basically, at this point, SolarCell International is positioned as a nationally and internationally recognized third-party owner and controller of the distribution of electricity across the U.S. and in many places of the world. So, does this all make sense? Well, our cash liquidity, as you can see, will stay positive for the most part, dipping just a slight bit, but by 2020 we'll hit $50 million. Our annual cash flow will dip considerably during the construction of the manufacturing facility, but it will then become positive and stay there. And our net profit by the year 2020 will be 25% and continue from that point on. So, I know what you're asking yourself. Are we going to succeed? Are we going to survive as a new entrant? Have we identified our strengths and new weaknesses? Yes, yes, and yes. One of the things I'd like you to remember as you're leaving here today is that the amount of energy absorbed by the Earth in 1 hour is enough to power mankind for an entire year. SolarCell International, for the planet, for mankind, for profit. Thank you very much for your time.
Your business is predicated on several really big assumptions, and so I want to know, if that doesn't happen, what's your plan B?
Well, which assumptions are we referring to? The Brazilian, I'm sorry, great question. but the Brazilian hydrothermal company and the government of Qatar have already given us the green light as far as that is concerned. The percentage increase on the CIGS and the technology has been proven and is working in the laboratory. So a lot of parts are already on their way in that regard.
So they've written checks?
They've not written checks, no. It's a verbal agreement at this point.
And in any government, anything could change at any particular
Absolutely.
time. So let's go back to that. My question still stands. What is your plan B if any of these assumptions?
If any of these assumptions are not correct, then we would probably be looking at a smaller manufacturing facility to begin with, not necessarily looking for that huge international type facility. It would be smaller and we would have to pare down what our plan is at this point.
Many utilities have their own solar programs and solar electricity generation programs.
Yes.
So you're essentially competing with your potential customers. Have you thought about that? And have you done any market research on the willingness of utilities like FPL, for example, to buy solar generated power from you versus generated on their own?
Great question. Originally, the plan was written with the idea of the government and, the government of Qatar and the Brazilian hydrothermal company as our first and primary clients. They're the ones who were requesting it, and that's kind of how we built our plan. The second part of that is the fact that the technology itself is far above anything that is out there today. So while the utilities do have their own programs, obviously if there's a more efficient, better, easier way to do it, as their equipment is becoming older and so on and so forth, we would become a good alternative for them in those cases.
Even though you don't want our money, I'll still say something nice. Nice job on the presentation, aesthetics. People tend to forget that they're important, and
Yes.
the presentation looks really pretty, so props to whoever did it.
Thank you.
I had a question just around the, if you go through some of the bigger clean tech blow-ups, for lack of a better term, over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Solyndra, Soleil, the list goes on. A common thread has been that the business model on the demand side relies heavily on government subsidy
Yes.
to help drive that demand.
Exactly.
What do you do differently that I guess, removes that need?
Excellent question. I'm so glad you brought it up. We have built this plan basically to mirror the best in the field right now called First Solar, okay? And specifically did it so that we would avoid pitfalls of like Solyndra, which everyone has heard about. First Solar, their biggest ace in the hole is the fact that they're owned by Walmart. Walmart is basically putting those on every Walmart store in the entire world, okay? They have huge pocketbooks. Solyndra, as you said, are underfunded and they can't necessarily make it over that hump to get to where they need to get in order to make it a continuous rotation, so to speak. We're feeling that with the investment that is coming from that large hydrothermal Brazilian company, as well as the government of Qatar that has trillions of dollars, who are both looking to do this, it's almost like having a Walmart in your pocket, so to speak, to keep it going and to keep that revenue cycle to where we need to get it. I hope that answered your question.
Why a reverse merger into a publicly traded shell?
The main purpose of that is so that we could make it so that the investors have an exit strategy. That was the big thing. I mean, I had heard somebody actually mention that earlier. How do I get my money back? At that point, you would be able to actually, on the open market, have that availability. In addition to that, it also assists us in creating that commodities market that I was talking about on the electricity. The idea that, sort of like you have mortgage-backed securities, you could have electricity-backed securities in a different form. That sort of thing.
Have you looked at outsourcing or thought about outsourcing the manufacturing as opposed to...
Well, outsourcing the manufacturing, the big key as far as where this technology is the decreased cost of the manufacturing itself. So where we thought about perhaps outsourcing it and having somebody else do it, essentially we're still in a situation where we're not benefiting as much as we could if we were doing the manufacturing. Incidentally, we've actually looked at doing it in both South Florida as well as India, and it's becoming kind of a political thing on where we would actually put it. So it may have a double whammy on that side.